open up the nominations for the chair.
Didn't we already do that? We did that last time.
It says elections of Oxford and swearing in.
We had some vacancies the last time, so we reappoint officers or elect officers at the beginning of every year.
So am I nominating you to be chair?
That's entirely up to you.
Okay, Right. All right, so I nominate Roger Ames to be chair of Board of Zoning Appeals.
We have a nomination. Do we have a second?
Second.
Are there any further nominations? Hearing none, shall we vote?
Would you like me to call the roll, Mr. Chair?
Please.
All right. Ms. Rumanier?
Yes.
Mr. Conrad?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? Yes. Mr. Ames?
Yes. We need a nomination for vice chair.
Wasn't me.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. We didn't nominate you. But you nominated.
I will nominate.
Oh, I nominate, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone nominated me. Did you just nominate me?
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Are there any further nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, shall we have a vote, sir?
Yes, sir. Ms. Rumanier?
Yes.
Mr. Conrad?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes. Leaving one office, the office of secretary. Can we have a nomination for the secretary, please?
I nominate Cal Conrad.
We have a nomination of Cal, or is there a second?
Second.
We have a nomination and a second. Is there any further nominations for the position of secretary? Hearing none, may we have a vote, sir?
Ms. Rumanier?
Yes.
Mr. Conrad?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes. Very good. Now we need a swearing in, please.
Oh, I can just stay here? That's nice. All right. Officers, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Roger Ames,
Calvin Conley.
Solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
of the United States and of the State of Ohio,
of the United States and of the State of Ohio,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and that I will, in all respects,
and I will, in all respects,
uphold and enforce the provisions of the Charter and ordinances of the City of Oxford,
will uphold and support the provisions of the Charter of the City of Oxford,
Ordinance of the City of Oxford.
ordinances also,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of the Board of Zoning Appeals and of the City of Oxford, upon which I am a member.
of the Board of Zoning Appeals in the City of Oxford, of which I am a member.
Thank you.
You need to sign the sign document.
Yeah, after the meeting, sign your forms and then I will notarize those as well.
Your function is first class.
Okay, with that, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of September 27th, 2022?
No, I move approval.
Have approval of the minutes,
I
a second. Cal, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Okay, new business, BZA 2022-4, variance to 10 North Beach Street, minimum building height from code section 1143.10 C3A. Just a second, can we have a motion to move into adjudication, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are in adjudication. Mr. Moore, if you would be so kind, go right ahead. Oh, because where you at? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and all the facts before the board.
I do.
Thank you very much, sir. Now you can proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, board members. So our only case of the night, this is BZA 2022-04. This is one that initially came in 2022, but is now being heard in 23. This is at 10 North Beach Street. This is the former site of the Princess Theater that was later rebuilt around 2015 or so. And I will turn on my remote so I can actually switch slides here. Never mind, I'll use the keyboard.
Because the battery died since September, the last time it died.
It has a fresh battery. I think it might be the computer at this time. It looks like the computer has decided to freeze up on me. So I will try reopening, and hopefully that will correct whatever the issue is. Looks like we're good now. Okay.
Very good.
Here we go. So some basic details about the case. The applicant is Mr. Robert Humphrey, who I believe is here tonight. The property owner is Rodbro Myers Rodbro Wood LLC. The current zoning classification for the property is UP Uptown District, and it is also within the Uptown Historic District, which acts as an overlay. This particular proposal has already been to the Historic Commission and has achieved approval of the certificate of appropriateness, so that step is effectively done at this time. The current use is a mixed-use building, so it has some commercial space on the first floor that has yet to be occupied since the new building has been built, and there is residential space above that. So the proposal at hand is to construct an open-air patio addition. This would be along the north side of the building, and at this time this is planned to support a new bar use that would be located in that first floor space, and this is a permitted use in the UP Uptown District. So the particular variance in mind is to the minimum building height, which the code specifies is 23 feet and 2 stories. So this is obviously a little bit different than what we might be typically accustomed to in any other district, which is a maximum building height. Typically it's anywhere from 35 to 45 or 48 feet is the maximum across Oxford. So the Uptown District is the only one that we have that has a minimum height specified of 2 stories. Here is a look at the subject property where it is located in town, and of course it's pretty much within the same block where we are right here today. So here is where the property is located. It's along North Beach Street between West Church Street and West High Street. It's on the west side of the block and has frontage along the street itself as well as the alleyway to the north. And then here's a look at the zoning classifications in the area. So it's pretty firmly within the UP Uptown zone within the block itself, as well as the block to the east and to the south. And there's residential office or RO zoning that is around the edge of the map here. Then here is a bird's eye view of the existing conditions of the property. So you can see it's a 4-story building. There's kind of this stepped approach that you can see in terms of the stories. And what has influenced that is our floor area ratio requirements or specifications in our UP Uptown zone. So there's a maximum floor area ratio of no more than 3 times the lot area. So that influences the amount of floor area you can have. You can have up to 4 stories, but you're limited to a maximum area ratio of 3. So that's what has influenced the configuration or bulk and scaling of the building since its construction. And there is a canopy that, of course, overhangs the right-of-way here along North Beach Street. And this project, to begin with, it was sort of a reconstruction of the original theater building, the Princess Theater, that previously existed on the site. So kind of mimicking some of those features that used to exist. And I'll show you here in a moment what the building actually used to look like. And for those of you who've lived in town for some time, you probably remember what this building was prior to its reconstruction. So here were some site photos that I took on January 19th. So offering you a view from the North Beach Street block, view along the alley. Currently there's a series of wheeler totes that is stored along the brick wall, along the building here. There is a proposed wall that would be built here as part of the project right next to this door. So that'll offer some screening of those wheeler totes that are already there. So that'll be a nice feature. And then here is kind of that grassy strip that they're looking to build that addition on. And this is part of the private property itself. So there is a property line or alley right-of-way line that runs through this grassy strip here. And then here is the view of what the building used to look like. And as you can see, it was more or less one story to begin with. And there was actually a code requirement that was adopted later. And I don't recall the exact year, but I know the staff report specifies it. I can look it up if need be. But it would have been, it would have been, well, I can look it up if need be. But there was a standard adopted in the code that specified the minimum building height of 2 stories. That did not exist previously. So this is actually the first time that we've had a case where we actually have to consider something that's contrary to code, where previously 1-story buildings would have been permissible by code and there would have only been a maximum building height specified for this particular district. And although I could not find anything in the record that specified the intent of this particular standard, I believe the intent is to try to ensure that there's a proper level of density and kind of a Main Street feel to the uptown, so you're not getting 1-story buildings like, for instance, we used to have a traditional looking Wendy's that was at the corner of High Street and Main Street. So to try to avoid sort of that 1-story appearance and ensure more of a Main Street feel, I believe is ultimately the intent. But yeah, as you can see, this is what the building looked like originally. And there were a series of cases that were heard previously by the BZA. I believe the first one was in the 1980s. And then there were a series of variances that were heard for the new building that was ultimately constructed. And I believe all those were contained to the year 2015. So this is the building, of course, that exists to this day. So kind of showing you the before and after here. So in a way, it's a return to form in the sense that we're kind of resurrecting a little bit of that 1-story feel along the alleyway that was to the north, as you can see here, looking back and forth. Okay, so the code section is 1143.10C3A, which provides the following language. It provides the minimum and maximum building heights. So, of course, we're considering the minimum height with this variance. Here's a look at the submitted site plan. So this shows you the covered area in yellow, and that's shown to total 456 square feet. And the property line is right along here, and here's the alley. And then I was able to take that plan and kind of geo-reference it into GIS to kind of provide a view of looking down, like a top-down view of the aerial image, and kind of give you a rough approximation for where the covered portion of the patio would be located, as well as the patio itself. So there would be a portion of the patio that would not have a roof over it, but would just have an enclosure wall around it. And this is meeting all the setback provisions of the district, so they don't need any variation from the setbacks. And then here is the floor plan that has been submitted for the bar use, which would be within this space here. They are showing a stage for some live entertainment associated with that bar. And then it is also pictured to have a recording studio use in the back portion of the space. And these are both found to be permitted uses in the UP district. So again, we're not really considering anything with the land use in particular. It all has to do with the building height with this particular hearing. And then a look at the elevations. So you can see here the height that's noted. It's just above 12 feet, 9 1/4 inches. So getting close to about 13 feet or so, so 1 story. And this is just highlighting for you the new portion of the project. And again, these plans from a design standpoint have already been seen by the Historic Commission. So from a design / architectural / material standpoint, this has already been approved. This is a view from the north, so there would be some brick columns here, as well as kind of a decorative arch element between the columns. And there is a window that is right here that would be converted to kind of an overhead door. And there would be 2 new overhead doors in the back that would be over top a bar top. So just to give you a sense for what's proposed there. And the next slide is just going to simply highlight all of the new features along the elevation. And then here's a west building elevation, so not too much that's kind of popping in that's brand new here. But here's, again, a view of that screen wall that would help to screen the wheeler totes that are currently stored behind the back of the wall there. Okay, so we've arrived at the decision criteria, so I'll just go through those one by one. So starting with criterion A, this is whether the property in question will yield reasonable return or whether there can be any beneficial use of the property without the variance. Although the first floor commercial tenant space in the 10 North Beach Street building has never been leased since being constructed, staff does not believe this constitutes evidence that reasonable return and beneficial use are not possible. The space could likely be put to some sort of viable use absent the approval of a variance enabling the construction of a one-story addition. So with respect to criterion A on its own, we do not believe this supports the variance. Criterion B is whether the variance is substantial. We believe criterion B supports granting the variance. So again, as I previously mentioned, the provision for minimum building height, well, here's where it was first adopted. It was first adopted as part of the 2003 rewrite of the zoning code. So previous to that, the only provision in place related to building height and specific to this property was the maximum height of what used to be 45 feet. That's just been bumped up by 3 feet since then. So right now it's 48, still capped at 4 stories. While there isn't a record available indicating the purpose and intent behind the minimum height requirement, which was incorporated in 2003 into the code, staff believes the general intent is to encourage greater density and intensity of property usage, resulting in bulk and form that is more characteristic of a traditional Main Street business district, which the Uptown District, of course, is. Staff believes this interest is probably greatest along a major street like High Street, which has seen various one-story commercial uses be replaced with larger buildings over the years, with a notable example, as I mentioned earlier, One West High was formerly the site of a one-story Wendy's restaurant, which now has a wonderful mixed-use building sitting on it. If the proposal at hand were situated in a more prominently visible location with direct frontage on a major thoroughfare, the request would probably be seen as more substantial in that case. But given that this location is situated on a more secondary street, that being North Beach Street, staff is of the opinion that the request is not substantial. Moving on to criterion C, that this is whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance. So for reasons that I've already stated, under criterion B, we as staff don't believe the essential character of the neighborhood is going to be negatively altered by this granting of the variance. The location of the proposed height reduction will not significantly compromise the urban Main Street feel of Uptown as composed to a more prominent location like High Street, like Main Street, or Park Place. Criterion D, whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of governmental services, i.e. water, sewer, garbage. We do not believe governmental services are going to be adversely impacted by granting this request. The engineering, fire, and police departments returned the application without comments. Had we received any comments, these might have contributed to this criterion. So we believe D supports the variance. E, whether the property owner purchased the property with knowledge, does not support the variance. And according to the applicant's letter, the property owner purchased the property with knowledge of this restriction. So criterion E doesn't seem to lend much weight to this decision. Criterion F is whether the property owner's predicament feasibly can be obviated through some method other than a variance. We find that F does not support the variance. While likely not considered a true predicament with respect to this criterion, property owner's desire at this point is to help increase interest for a potential tenant to occupy this space. And again, this is a space that has been vacant since the building has been reconstructed. So despite long-running vacancy, staff believes the space could still be put to some other viable use without necessitating approval of a variance to construct a one-story addition. Criterion G is whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance. We feel that this probably lends a lot of weight to this particular decision. We feel that G supports the variance. As previously stated, staff believes the general spirit and intent of this minimum building height provision is to encourage greater density and intensity of property usage in Oxford's premier commercial area, resulting in bulk and form more characteristic of a traditional Main Street business district. In order to comply with the zoning code, the applicant would be forced to build at least one additional story upward. So there's a way that they could get around this code requirement by building more height to their addition. Because of the project's more concealed location on a secondary roadway, we believe that substantial justice would be done by granting this variance. And finally, we arrive at criterion H. We do feel there's some other relevant factors that lend support to granting the variance, and there are 3 of those that I'll go through here. So, as I showed from the street view image from 2013, the former Princess Theater building was 1 story tall, at least tall enough, I guess, to have a movie theater inside, but nevertheless 1 story, and built up to the alley right-of-way. So the proposal at hand thus represents a similar return to bulk and scale along this alley. Number 2, the proposal constitutes a minor addition to an already existing building, which is already 4 stories tall. Thus, the site as a whole largely already embodies the spirit of the minimum building height requirement. A request for a brand new building that was merely or entirely 1 story would likely be viewed very differently. And finally, number 3, so I don't know if you noticed from the pictures that I showed from the alleyway, but there are some electrical and telephone cables that are strung across the alley overhead and may require relocation should the project be required to be built higher than 1 story. Thus, this would increase the overall project cost and complexity. So overall, those are 3 factors that we feel should be weighed in consideration of whether to grant the variance or not. So as always, I will provide some concluding remarks. So in accordance with section 1139.02C1, the burden of proof is upon the applicant to present reliable and substantial evidence that supports the request. Furthermore, per section 1139.02C2, the BZA must find that practical difficulties exist that would render strict application of the code unreasonable. So you are to use these criteria A through H, and there is also an enclosed letter from Mr. Humphrey, and the applicant, of course, is here to provide testimony and answer any questions, and I am happy to answer any questions as well.
Questions for some more? Cal?
The original owner guaranteed that there would be a theater, a movie theater in that property. Why didn't they build it?
I cannot answer that because I'm not aware of the previous owner's wishes, or I'm not aware that there was any condition to that effect, nor do I believe that there could have been a condition to that effect to require a certain land use be established.
Can I add something to that, Zach?
Sure.
I was on the board when the original petition came up to build a new building. And I don't believe there was ever a guarantee they were going to try to get a theater. The problem with getting a theater in a small town like this is everybody wants a sixplex or an eightplex, and it wasn't economically feasible, as it turned out. Other questions? I have a couple. I'm going back to the original picture of the Princess Theater. You don't need to pull it up. But in looking at that picture, the building went directly to the edge of the alley. And this space was built in there. Is there any problem with the alley right-of-way? I think you mentioned that the right-of-way covers part of that grassland too.
I believe that the line does run through that kind of grassy area. Let me back up for a second because I don't think I can state definitively that it does run through the grassy area, but typically I would say, just from my experience of looking at maps of Oxford and looking at survey plans, asphalt of an alleyway doesn't typically go past the alley right of way. Sometimes it can be a little bit off center, but we would be relying upon the surveys and plans that have been prepared by the applicant, by the architect.
And obviously, if
So-
the Princess was still there, it would be a moot point. I see a practical application of not going 2 stories. Because if you go 2 stories on a building like this, you're gonna block off all the windows of that first-story apartment.
That is true. I
Which
believe
is
something
not
to that
practical.
effect was mentioned in the applicant's letter as well, that there would have to be a blocking of the windows that are already present along that alley. So there would have to be some consideration for that too. To adapt the building to fit a 2-story
Yeah.
addition.
Any other questions?
I got a question about that addition too, and maybe the applicant can respond. So I had a guess that the variance would be a request for this side lot, but apparently there's room on that green space to build which is the owner property to build this, what's it called, a portico kind of thing?
I called it an open air patio.
Open air
'Cause
patio.
It's open to the elements, but it does have a roof overhead,
Right.
so it would be covered.
So it's gonna be built on the property, and then presumably there'll be a door smashed between the wall and the portico, I'm guessing, because people have to get there, right? The point is that this would be an extension of the bar, like, you can go from the bar out to the portico.
Yes, and this would probably be a good slide to speak to
Yeah.
that. So there is a door proposed here for accessing the patio, and there would be, I guess I'll call them pedestrian gates here where the arrows are, as well as here and here. So it would be somewhat of a controlled area
Okay,
that would be associated with the bar.
okay.
And this door here already exists. This leads
Wait,
into the
that's on
stairwell.
is that on the other, what side is that?
This is on the north side.
Okay, the north side. Oh, so there's the thing over there, yeah.
And there would still be some area for, I guess, landscaping, green space, still retained here. So there is no conflict with the front yard setback, which this board has seen before. That's 16.5 feet from any street except High Street.
Right.
This plan complies with that setback, so there's no reason
Yeah.
for a variance from that.
Yeah.
And there's no setback required from a side in Uptown, since it's a more urban district.
Okay, no other questions?
Any other? Thank you, Zachary. Great
Thank you.
presentation, as normal.
Why don't the property owners have a survey?
So in order to develop property, you have to first know what's on the ground and what you have control over in terms of where your land is and where you can situate buildings and expansions and so forth. So a survey was done when the building was originally constructed. I don't know for certain if a brand new survey was done. I imagine that they might have taken the data from that previous project to produce the plans that we now have. The applicant could definitely answer that better than I could.
All right.
And I can pull up the, here is the site plan. So this is a survey quality site plan that shows the boundaries of the site. So the yellow is
I
within the
understand.
boundaries of the site.
But does it fit within the boundaries? The alley boundaries?
It fits within their property. It does not go into the alley right of way. So the best representation that I could produce just with the skills that I have, because this plan here doesn't, it provides the line work for the existing building and where it's being expanded to, but you don't perhaps get as much sense for some of the contextual features around it. So this slide here is probably the best representation I could give you in terms of where that patio would be situated on the property. And this actually gives you, there's a lot of shadow here, but you can definitely see that the edge of pavement is here. And doing the measurements in GIS per the survey that I was provided, this is giving you a pretty good approximation on the top-down aerial imagery of where that patio will be located, and that there would be still kind of a strip of land, if you will, between the patio and the asphalt pavement that's there along the alley. But it would, I guess when it comes down to the building permit stage, if there's some way to work through that, and our service department typically does the comments when it comes to features that would intersect with the right-of-way, like driveways and aprons and sidewalks and so forth. So if there's going to be any sort of a pavement change between the building and the alleyway that maybe facilitates proper drainage or whatever that may be, that will be through the building permit phase. So in terms of the zoning, we're just checking to make sure that the survey plan that's provided us actually shows features that are located on the private property and not the right-of-way.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Presenting for the applicant, please.
Sir?
Yes, please. Have to swear you in? Okay. You swear to, one or the other, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in matters before this board.
I do.
Please state your name and affiliation for the record, please.
Robert Humphrey. I'm a project architect on this addition. Our firm is Robert Treaton and Associates. We're at 300 High Street, Suite 612 in Hamilton, 45011.
Thank you, sir. Please proceed.
Well, he did a perfect job, I think, but I don't see anything I'd like to add, although I would clarify that we used the existing survey that we did when we built the existing building, and the property line and the right-of-way for the power lines above are all right there at the edge of the alley. So it doesn't encroach on the property, but it doesn't encroach on the alley either. So we're proposing a 3-foot sidewalk that guides you back there to the patio.
There's room in there for, you gotta go into the front of the patio?
I'm sorry?
You gotta go into the front of the patio with the 3 foot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or to the side, and there's an entrance. There's a gated portion. Go back to that plan, please.
Site plan?
No, the one right before that, the one you just showed, the
floor
plan,
plan?
that one.
Okay.
You can see the outline where the dimensions are. That's outlining it's either a brick colonnade or a load gate. And the first, on the right, the first entranceway, you come through the gate, and that's all an open patio. And right there, where during work hours, that overhead door would be open for them to walk in. And then everything to the right of that would be extended, more landscaping than there is now. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
How, can I ask a question?
Yes.
How wide is that patio gonna be? What's the width?
You mean protruding from the building?
Yeah.
It goes out towards the alley, approximately 8 feet, 8 inches.
Oh, it's that big.
And then, like I said, there's a little over 3 feet from there to the alley itself. There would be a curb and, the 3 foot to walk. outside the patio, the enclosed patio area.
In a room this size, for my curiosity, what's the maximum occupancy?
For the first floor?
Yes. Yeah, just for the
It's-
bar area.
It's been a few months since I've addressed that. We've had the design ready for a while, and then this proposal to build on the outside came up, and going through all it was tabled a couple times at HAPC, so I couldn't tell you exactly. I would say around 200.
Get a rockin' band wailing in there, those extra doors might be a great safety feature too.
Yeah.
If something would go wrong, you can get out.
Yeah. And not that it applies, but I talked to the client last week, and I got the feeling that he's not even sure it's going to be a music venue. It might just be a typical bar. So, but either way, as far as my understanding, it's approved for those uses.
Mr. Humphrey, might I direct a question to you about the original intent that it would be a theater? Unfortunately,
That was before my time at Robert Treaton. I've only been there a little over a year, and that all took place, what, 5 years ago?
7 years ago,
7.
or 8.
Apologize.
We can't, I guess my thought on that is we can't legislate what's gonna be in a building, correct?
Correct.
We cannot legislate that specific use. So if an owner says, I'm gonna turn this into a dance hall, and we say, yay, dance hall, and then it turns out they can't do a dance hall, there's no legal guarantee that will happen. Certainly in the community, there was a lot of attention to that idea that it dreamed that it would become a theater, but that didn't mean.
A lot of hope.
Yeah, there was a lot of hope. Yeah, but that didn't mean the owner had to do it or could financially do it or anything. I think that was community.
The practicalities became, from my understanding, it came down to they could not attract an operator.
Yeah. Small movie theaters are
Any other questions?
I have no other questions.
Cal? Chad? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Anyone else like to present for the petitioner? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and matters before this board?
I do.
Please state your name and affiliation for the record, please.
My name is Matthew Howe. I am also employed by Robert Treaton and Associates, 300 High Street, Hamilton, Ohio. Just answering a couple of your questions. From a from a building code perspective, the occupant load for this place could be anywhere from just say 300 to 500 technically. Now that could
Wow,
be
that's a lot of people.
and that's where it's standing room only. I just did some quick numbers just using scale. And we're first floor space is roughly about probably 5,000 square feet. So tables and chairs for something like that is 1 per 15, give or take. So whatever the primary function of it, if it becomes something other, tables and chairs, you could be like 330. That doesn't include circulation space and stuff like that. That's just doing it high level, very quick.
The Beatles aren't coming to town.
Yeah. Mr. Conrad, from your question with regard to the setback, on that previous image that Mr. Morris was pulling up, you could see the concrete curb on the left-hand side. That is the extent of where the property line is currently. So we're not, the grass area only goes basically right to that concrete curb, and it continues straight out to Beach Street. So the 8 foot 8 inches that Mr. Humphreys was talking about, that is to the edge of our canopy structure patio. And then we have the another 3 feet of area that we are talking about putting some, hard surface pavement for sidewalks. So allowing a little bit more safety back in that back alleyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Questions? Thanks, sir.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else care to present for the petitioner? Okay. We have a motion to go back to the regular meeting.
So moved. Motion to go back to regular meeting.
Second?
Second.
All approved, say aye.
Right.
Aye. Comments?
I like this proposal. It seems like it's the kind of thing that will, although it's not going to require, and this is as Zach said, it's not required to make this be a selling place, but it may help. And this place has been empty for a long time, so I guess that's the theory behind it, that this will make it more attractive for someone to move into it. My only concern, I think, is outside the scope of Board of Zoning Appeals, which is like, whatever it becomes with an open patio is going to be noise issues. But that's not for us to decide, right? Yeah.
That's correct. We do have a noise ordinance in Oxford, but that would not be within the scope or purview of BZA.
So, because you never know. I mean, maybe, who knows? Maybe it'll become a yoga studio and it'll be really quiet. You never know. So anyway, I support this. I think it's a good proposal, and I like it. And if the variance is just a request to not go above 1 story, that makes total sense to me.
Comments, Ken?
No.
Jed?
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes the building more marketable, could potentially get a new business to town. I think that's good for the economics of the community.
The only comment that came back was from the development staff, and they're doing the right thing here. Yeah. Return with comments, and Seth's all for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Then in BZA 2022-4, variance for 10 North Beach Street. Variance of section 1143.10C3A for the minimum height of the building. Do we have a motion?
Before the motion, sorry, but I may have had an oversight when you were swearing in the officers. Were you supposed to also swear in just the normal member? Because I didn't actively participate, but I see the form here now, and I thought, was I supposed to?
When he votes, it's good.
Right, before I vote, so if that's my oversight, my apologies, but when I thought you said, I'm going to swear in the officers, and so I didn't say anything.
I'll defer to our legal staff to make a determination.
Well, it says officers and then swearing in BZA member.
I was sworn in, I think, when I started last year, so.
So you probably
The
need to
new
be sworn
year.
again.
Ah,
So yes, because this is your first meeting of the year.
Yes.
correct.
Right, so that was, thank you for catching that, that's also my
So why don't we, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay.
When you guys make an official decision. So if we can, we'll do that. This. Do you have a form that you can sign?
I do,
afterwards?
yeah.
Okay, sign that afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, so raise your right hand.
I, Donald Chadwick Smith,
solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
of the United States and the state of Ohio,
of the United States and the state of Ohio,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and that I will, in all respects,
and that I will, in all respects,
uphold and enforce the provisions of the Charter and ordinances of the City of Oxford,
uphold and support the
provisions of the Charter
provisions of the Charter
and ordinances of the City of Oxford,
and ordinances of the city of Oxford,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the Board of Zoning Appeals
of the Board of Zoning Appeals
and of the City of Oxford upon which I am a member.
and of the City of Oxford and the Board of Zoning Appeals, of which I am a member.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now you can get back to business.
Now
Yes.
you're really a member of the board.
Speaking
Make a
of,
motion if you choose.
speaking of formalities, I may not have mentioned my name as I was being sworn in, so I'm Zachary Moore, city planner for the city of Oxford. And I believe I've told the truth this evening, and will continue to tell the truth this evening.
Shall we start this whole thing over again? Motion, please. And if, in the motion, if you would recognize the statutes and the Duncan standards of which you are placing the motion, it would be appreciated, the criterion.
I can do that. Zach used to provide a cheat sheet that would help me with that, but I don't know if I have cheat sheets here, but I think I can do that anyway. So I moved to approve. I got the. I have the-
Three pages of cheat sheets.
Yeah, you said, yeah, okay. So I moved to approve BZA 2022-04, which is a request for variance to section 1143.10 C3A. And because in the support of Duncan decision standards B, C, D, E, and H. I'm going to say those.
Do we have a motion to approve? Do we have a second? Do we have a motion and a second to approve? Do we have a roll call, please?
Start with Ms. Rumanier,
Yes.
Mr. Conrad,
No.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
and Mr. Ames.
Yes. The vote is 3-1. It is affirmative. The variance is granted. Anything else to come before the board? Do we have anything for next month, Zach?
We do have one case for next month, March 28th, so
Okay.
we will see then.
With that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.